What would you ask a serial killer? It might seem like an odd question to start off with, but that's exactly what psychologists and, in some cases, detectives are trained to do. To get inside the mind of a serial killer, investigators will often interview them, asking questions about their crimes, or even engaging in small talk. It's not common, but it has happened several times where serial killers have given enough information to investigators to lead them to more victims or other evidence they might have missed. In other cases, serial killers have provided details about their crimes that have helped detectives link them to other similar crimes. Sometimes serial killers will confess to crimes they haven't been charged with, providing investigators with valuable insight into their state of mind at the time of the crime. So, how do psychologists help discover the mind of society's most dangerous people? Let's take a look. The first step is figuring out who you're going to interview. In the case of Ted Bundy, one of the most famous serial killers in history, the FBI sent agents to interview him without telling him why. When they arrived at the prison where he was being held, they were informed that Bundy had just finished a meal and was expecting company. Bundy, being the polite gentleman that he was, stood up from his table, walked over, and shook hands with the men while thinking that he was going to be interviewed about the crime he had been convicted of. Little did he know he'd already been charged with a murder he committed in another state, and the agents were there to find out if he was guilty. Once the initial pleasantries were out of the way, the agents engaged in small talk with Bundy, discussing topics such as sport and current events before eventually transitioning to more serious subjects, such as philosophy and religion. Bundy was surprisingly articulate and charismatic, which made it difficult for the agents to determine whether or not he was being truthful. Nevertheless, after several hours of conversation, the agents felt that they had gained some insight into Bundy's state of mind and his motivations for committing his crimes. Moving on to the next step, which is the interview itself. The main goal of the interview is to get the suspect to talk about their exploits and motivation. While doing so, investigators will listen carefully for any key words or phrases that could give them clues as to the killer's modus operandi, or MO. This is essentially the killer's unique way of committing their crimes. For example, Ted Bundy's MO involved targeting young women who fit a certain physical description, luring them into his car under false pretenses, and then assaulting and murdering them. By understanding a killer's MO, investigators can start to develop a profile of the type of person who might be responsible for a particular crime spree. This can be an invaluable tool in catching future serial killers, as investigators will know what to look for when searching for a suspect. But how can they inform us of what to look for? That leads us to our next step, which is developing a psychological profile. Once an interview is complete, psychologists will work with law enforcement to develop a psychological profile of the individual being interviewed. This profile will include a detailed description of the person's behavior, personality, and mental state, as well as any potential risk factors that could indicate a propensity for violence or criminal activity. Psychological profiling is particularly useful in cases where there is little physical evidence or forensic evidence available, as it can provide investigators with a starting point for their investigation. So, what did we find out? We learned that many serial killers share some common characteristics, including being highly intelligent, having a low level of empathy, and being able to manipulate and persuade others easily. However, it is important to note that not all serial killers fit this profile, and there are many people who possess these characteristics who have never committed a crime. Psychometric profiles are just one piece of the puzzle and should be used in conjunction with other investigative techniques and evidence. They are not foolproof and should not be used as the sole basis for making decisions about an individual's guilt or innocence. So now it's your turn. Would you interview a prisoner? If so, what would you ask them? And do you think psychometric profiling is an effective tool for law enforcement? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more content. Thanks for watching. This review was by the renowned Dr. Stephen F Myler, who has spent time in prisons interviewing all sorts of convicts